Okay, well, next talk from Mark Bertolos on shapes of charged drops in electric field and jets.
First, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this talk and to stay here in Isaac Newton. It has been very pleasant stay. So this is a work I have been done over the years in collaboration with a PhD student, Lucia Belén Gamboa, and one collaborator of mine in Spanish Polytechnic University, Pindelan. So let me introduce my talk by showing you these two experiments. Actually, this is going to be the main topic of my talk. So this first experiment is describing what happens when a charge drop becomes supercritical. Okay, so typically you think of drops levitating in the air like spherical objects, right? Because you want to minimize the total area. But if these drops are electrified, so you put some electric charge into this drop, imagine for instance dropping a cloud, then if the charge is strong enough, there is sufficiently high electric charge inside, since the electric charges of the same sign, they tend to repel each other, typically this will lead to some instability. Okay, so there is a critical value of the electric charge. This is called Rayleigh feasibility ratio or feasibility charge, so that when you overcome this value, drop becomes unstable, and the situation is what you see here. The drop deforms, becomes an ellipsoid, okay, deforms even more, and at some point develops conical tips, two opposite conical tips, from which very fast jets come out. Also they are very thin, they disintegrate in thousands of small droplets. These droplets are carrying a lot of charge, so the drop by doing this is losing a lot of charge, becomes subcritical again, and return to the equilibrium configuration, which is the spherical shape. Okay. So the thing we want to understand in this talk, we wanted to understand, is first how this process carries on, and mainly what happens here when this ejection of jets is appearing into the problem. Now, second situation, which is very related, essentially is the same, but now your drop is sitting on a flat surface, sitting on a solid. You apply electric charge by pulling it from a battery. So you connect a battery, the battery is providing some charge to the drop. Now you provide an electrode, you place an electrode beneath the drop, and then the different sign of these charges and discharges produces electric fields so that the drop deforms. Typically it's going to expand. Okay, this phenomenon is called electrowetting. Now what you see here is the appearance, this same problem, of another kind of instability which is very related. It happens when you apply more and more electric field, when you apply more and more charge to the drop, that the drop, instead of spreading indefinitely, reaches some limiting radius. Okay, this is called the saturation radius, and after that, no matter how much you increase the voltage, the drop is not going to spread anymore. And what is going to happen is that at the rim of the drop, this is the view of the drop from above, instability is developed, and this instability leads to the formation of many, many small droplets. Okay, so it's the same situation in principle as the situation here, but in a somewhat different context. So the plan of my talk is the following. First, I will introduce very quickly why this is interesting from the physical and technological point of view. Second, I will study the stationary shapes, so no evolution, just looking at the energies of the problem and what are the minimizers of these energies. Then I will talk about the evolution problem. Typically, this evolution will happen for very low Reynolds number. Okay, so the previous talk was very high Reynolds number. Here, everything is dominated by viscous terms because the drops in practical applications are very tiny. Okay, micrometer typically. Reynolds number so is a very small number, so everything is dominated by viscosity. And finally, I will concentrate on a formation of Rayleigh jets. Okay, and we will see, according to our theory, what is going to be the role of chemistry into the formation of these jets. Well, concerning practical applications, well, one of them is what happens with drops in a cloud. So some people speculate, think that this mechanism could be the onset of rain. Okay, so when one of these drops explodes, forms these jets are ejecting thousands of small droplets, which are seeds for the formation, the nucleation of new droplets. Eventually, this could lead to rain. Okay, this idea some people have. Second practical application is mass spectrometry. Okay, actually, this deserves Nobel Prize in chemistry. So the idea is that you have a cone with some chemical inside that you want to analyze. You apply a very, some meniscus. You apply a very strong electric field. Then you eject very thin jet, which in either situation is going to carry very small number of molecules. And then these molecules that you want to analyze are much simpler to study. by using this device. Now the second problem, electrowetting. There are practical applications, for example, electric papers. Imagine that these drops are inside the pixel of some display, so you can activate or deactivate, you can create black or white just by applying electric field. Or you can think of this drop as being some kind of lens, so by applying electric field you can modify the optical properties of the drop. Okay. Now, from a mathematical point of view, how can you compute static drops, static shapes? Well, the most classical theory for a drop, forgetting for a moment an electric field or anything, is just adding areas, adding interfacial areas. So you have a drop here, you have sitting the drop in a solid, and you have three interfaces: the liquid vapor interface between the drop and the air surrounding, the solid vapor, and the solid liquid interface. So each one of these interfaces carrying an energy which is proportional to the area of each one of them multiplied by some self-extension forces. Call it gamma liquid vapor, gamma solid vapor, gamma solid liquid. The area of the substrate we can imagine is stable, for instance. No? The area is always the same, so you can always write the solid vapor area as the substrate area minus the solid liquid area, so that the energy can be written in this way, when now you have a global constant, and the thing is to minimize this quantity. Okay, this quantity which is involving these coefficients and the liquid vapor and the solid liquid areas. And you can find, this is very simple, that for axis symmetric shapes, what you have as a minimizer for a given volume is a spherical cap. Okay, and this spherical cap is such that it has a contact angle, which is this angle here, called Young's angle, whose cosine is given by this expression in terms of physical parameters. More difficult is to prove that in general, for any kind of shape, allowable shape, the minimizer is actually the same. Okay, it's actually a spherical cap, but it has been done, so you can find it in this book. Now, for our problem, we have to add to the interfacial energies, we have to add the energy that you have to take from the infinity or from the battery, okay, and put inside the drop. Okay, so the energy that it takes for taking all these charges inside the drop is given by 1/2, it's minus, it's negative because you are spending energy, is minus 1/2 of the capacity of the whole system, okay, where the capacity is the electric capacity, but also coincides with the typical mathematical notion of capacity, is the integral of the gradient of the potential outside the drop, okay, to the square, with the condition that the potential is harmonic function and b is equal to 1 at the surface, or it also coincides with the minimizer of this quantity over all functions b that has this integral finite. Okay. Now, from the mathematical point of view, there is a difficulty here, which is that the surface area is easy to estimate for anybody, but the capacity is very difficult. Typically, if you want to have explicit expressions, there are no more than 5-10 bodies for which you can give a close expression for the capacity, and even estimating is a difficult problem. But nevertheless, because of the idea of Lippmann in 1875, you can give an estimate of the capacity by thinking some realization, which is that this drop together with the electrode, they consist, or they form something which is very close to a plane parallel capacitor. Okay, and in this case, for a two-plate parallel capacitor, the capacity is just proportional to the area of the two plates, to the electric permittivity, so electric permittivity of the media between these two plates, and divided by the distance. And now, if you look at this area is the same as the liquid-solid interface area, so you can put this together with this, and you arrive to the same minimization problem without electric field, with the only thing that now the physical parameters are different. And now it's not gamma 1, gamma 2, now you have something else adding to gamma 2. Okay? And you can solve this by the same way, and what you find by this idealization is that your shape is still a spherical cap but with a different angle. Okay? This is called Lippmann's angle. Of course, this is a very rough approximation, so what we did, starting into this problem, was to compute the real shapes. Okay? And the real shapes, essentially, you can compute by solving the Euler-Lagrange equation associated to this variational problem. The Euler-Lagrange equation is this. Okay, so you have that the curvature, the mean curvature of the surface, of the interface, minus the surface charge density to the square. The surface charge density is given by minus the electric constant normal derivative of the potential is harmonic function also at the drop. Oops. So you have here minus the normal derivative of the potential to the second power. Of course the potential is the solution to a Laplace equation is outside the shape, the drop, so you can consider this as a non-local term. Okay, it's the solution of some differential operator outside the drop, equals to minus the pressure, which plays the role of a Lagrange multiplier. So you have to choose the pressure so that the volume is given. Okay, so altogether you have some kind of non-linear integral differential equation that you have to solve, subject to the conditions that the drop is touching the solid and is touching it with Young's angle. Okay, because the real angle actually is always Young's angle. Okay, it's a local property that doesn't really depend on volume forces such as electric forces. So one way we use to solve this is by iteration. So what we do is to put this operator inside this equation, okay, ht minus Laplacian of this quantity, start with some arbitrary initial condition and let this evolve. And asymptotically what we are going to find is a solution of this equal to constant, and the constant will be the one necessary to produce that the volume is given. The volume is the same as the initial shape. Okay. Now the potential, in order to compute the normal derivative of the potential, so the surface charge density, can be written in this way. You can use boundary integral formulation. So if your potential is constant at the surface, you solve this integral equation for sigma, you plug it here and you solve the problem. And by doing this, we created these graphs where you can find as a function of the Young's angle, okay, and a function of given potential, which are each one of these lines. For example, this one is 0.45, this one is 0.9, and so on. What is the spreading radius? What is the maximum spreading that the drop is going to develop? Okay, and you can find different shapes, such as these ones for a small potential, or for a large potential, these ones. Okay, which have very funny property, which is that they look like a toroidal. Okay, and actually you can show that a finite value of the potential, this is touching down. Okay, when we developed these solutions, we thought that they were very pathological. We did this in 2009, so we thought that, you know, for some reason they could be neglected. We were very surprised because this year there was an experimental paper in which at very, very tiny droplets, 15 nanometers, actually they found toroidal shapes. Okay, these are electrified droplets on a solid substrate. Now, you can also compute these thick lines that you have here, or these dotted lines that you have here. These are bifurcation lines. What is the meaning of this? So once you have your minimization problem and you have a stationary axisymmetric shape, you can ask yourself what happens when you introduce non-axisymmetric perturbations, right? Now these lines are lines at which, when you add a non-axisymmetric perturbation, this will be n equal to 2, so this will be an axisymmetric perturbation with two lobes. This will be n equal to 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and so on. You can create many others. So these are lines such that when you add a non-axisymmetric perturbation with n nodes, the energy of the resulting drop is lower than the energy of the axisymmetric drop. So the meaning of this is that you can break, for a given potential, you can break for a given potential and a given angle, you can break the axial symmetry when you cross these lines. Okay? So according to us, this is the origin of the saturation effect in electrowetting. So you cannot spread anymore because at some point you have a bifurcation, and also the origin of instabilities. Okay? Because by creating instabilities at the rim of the drop, you lower the energy. Now we have experimental comparison. So there was an experiment done some years ago where you can find what is, according as a function of the voltage, this, which is the difference of the cosine of the Liebman angle minus the cosine of the Young's angle. And the thing is that, you know, for axisymmetric shapes you can spread forever, so you can achieve in theory cosine of Liebman angle which is equal to 1. You can get very large, but the reality is that you get to some saturation which is not 1, it's 0.3. Okay, and this happens for this particular experiment when the voltage is between 400 and 500. Okay, so according to our calculation, there is a symmetry breaking bifurcation which breaks the axial symmetry exactly at this point. Okay, this is the difference between the n equal to 0, this is the axisymmetric mode, this is n equal to 2, the non-axisymmetric with two lobes drop, and there is a bifurcation, so this difference is 0, so you prefer to be here than here, at a value of the potential which in physical units is between 500 and 600 volts. Okay. So actually this is our idea of why saturation and instability happens in electrowetting. And now concerning the evolution problem, as I said, so now we want to look at the formation of the jets. Once we have an instability developing, we want to see what happens with the jet. And as I said, typically Reynolds number is very small for experiments, so you can approximate everything by Stokes problem. And now you write the curvature minus the density of charge to the square at the right hand side of the balance of stresses. Okay, this is the difference of viscous stresses, and this is the surface tension force and the electrostatic repulsion force. Okay, let me not go into much details, just tell you that we use boundary integral formulation for the problems. It's the two problems, both the electrostatic problem and the Stokes problem are linear. You can use boundary integral formulation. Okay, this would be the boundary integral formulation for Stokes with authentic kernels. You can evolve in time by using an Euler scheme, so that we start with a mesh, triangular mesh on a spherical drop. We introduce a small perturbation, and what you find is that your drop, when the charge is sufficiently large, is evolving to shapes like this, which look very close to the experiment, and develops a conical singularity in finite time. Okay, very much as you can see here. Okay, so the conclusion is that when you have Stokes coupled with basic electrostatics, the result of this is the formation of a finite time singularity which has a form of the shape of a cone. This cone typically has an angle which is between 20 and 30 degrees, and this agrees very much with the experimental, which is also between 25, 26, 27. We can do more than that, so we can look how the singularity develops. For example, you can compute the curvature at the tip to the -2, and you can find that it has a linear relation close to the singularity. So this means that the curvature is going to blow up like t naught minus t to the -1/2. Okay, you use that to rescale your variables, so blow up your system close to the singularity. So the natural scalings for the shape of the drop, the pressure, the velocity and the potential are like this, just from the dimensional analysis of the equations, and you can show numerically that these shapes actually coincide with the self-similar shapes that you can compute as solutions to this system. Okay, so the result is that if you take into consideration only a Stokes system, what is going to happen is that you develop a singularity, and that's it. There is no jet. Okay, another question is what happens. What do you have to add to your system? So what is missing from the physics so that jet develops, right? Now we talk with experimentalists, and what they told us is that in order to achieve what is most interesting for them, which is to have very thin jets, for nanotechnological applications, if they want to achieve very thin jets, what they do typically is to increase the conductivity of the liquid. Okay, and the way to increase the conductivity is to make higher concentration of salt in the liquid. They add salts to it, okay, like sodium chloride, for instance. So this is it. You add some salt to the liquid. So sodium chloride in water is going to dissociate into sodium ions, which are positive, chlorine ions, which are negative, so that you will have a net charge inside the drop, which is the sum of the balance of each one of the ions, in this case +1, -1, multiplied by the charge of an electron, multiplied by the concentration of ions. Okay, you have two species here, the chlorine and the sodium. The situation can be more complicated. You can have many ions, but we are focusing just in two ions, and you will have this net charge. The charges are moving inside the medium, drift by several terms. One of them is the electric drift. Okay, since they are charged, if you apply electric field, then the charges are going to move direction of the electric field or the opposite depending on the sign. You have also diffusion, right? The charges are going to diffuse, the ions are going to diffuse in the medium, water for instance, and you will have also convection. Okay, you have a liquid, you have velocity field inside the liquid, and you have also some drift because the particles, the ions, are trying to follow the velocity field. So at the end you will have conduction of ions due to all these three terms, all these three sources of motion, all these three fluxes. Now there is a relation between the diffusivity and the mobility, this coefficient here of the ions, which is given by Einstein's relation. So the quotient of both for any species is equal to Boltzmann constant multiplied by the absolute temperature. So you plug this flux into the equations for each one of the species, you solve it together with Stokes, together with the electric field problem, Laplacian of potential equal to density, to charge density. You solve this system and you find the solution. Okay, but this is too complicated, too many equations. Okay. So what we did is to make an approximation which is reasonable. When you go to the numbers of the real physics, you find that typically convection is much smaller effect than diffusion and drift by electric field. So if you kill convection, you kill this term, what you find is that the electric field, which is the gradient of V with minus sign, minus the diffusion gradient of density is the total flux. And now if you look for stationary configuration, so you think that everything is going to go very fast to a stationary situation, this derivative is equal to 0, so the flux is constant. You get an equation that tells you that n gradient of V minus some constant gradient of n is equal to a constant, and you can integrate. It's one of these equations very easily. Okay, and what you get is that the mass densities are given by some arbitrary constants that you have to determine from boundary conditions, the exponential of minus some constant multiplied by the potential, and this for each one of the species. Now this mass density is proportional to the charge density, so you have to put in the right hand side of Poisson equations. So you have that the electrostatic problem reduces to Laplacian of V equals to total charge, which is some sum of constants and exponentials of the potential. Okay, you get a nonlinear elliptic PD, which is called the Poisson-Boltzmann equation. Okay, so now the question is, if you solve this equation and you find the potential, what is going to be the distribution of charges inside the drop? Okay, so this is the problem, right? So this is the electrostatic problem, and outside the drop there is no free charge, so the Laplacian of V is equal to 0. So now you solve this subject to this boundary condition that the potential goes to 0 when R goes to infinity. From this you can find the potential, the electric charge, then the electric charge you put into a hydrodynamic problem and solve it. Again, this is a bit difficult, so what we can do is to look at asymptotic limits. Okay, and the most reasonable asymptotic limit is the limit when this parameter, which is called or is proportional to the square of the Debye layer length, it's a physical parameter, it's a physical length, it's called the Debye layer or the Debye length. When this parameter goes to 0, okay, we are going to look at this parameter going to 0. Now this parameter here, as you can see, involves the temperature, involves typical length of the drop, so the volume to the 1/3 for instance, Boltzmann constant, permittivities, and the balance of the charges. So typically you can think of very small droplets, so that this parameter is small, and this parameter epsilon therefore is also small. Okay, so if you call the ratio between the Debye length and the typical size of the drop epsilon to the 1/2, then the previous equation, to make things simpler just for two species, sodium and chlorine, is written in these terms, okay, where epsilon is a small parameter. Okay, these integrals are coming from the constraint that the total number of ions is given. You put certain amount of salt and you can compute from this certain amount of salt how many ions you have. Okay, this constraint of the number of ions is producing these non-local terms. And now this theorem that I proved with my student Lucia Gamboa says that this problem has a unique solution, which is smooth both inside the drop and outside the drop, and the charge density, the volume charge density inside the drop, is at leading order, this quantity that depends on the surface charge density for a perfect conductor, so in the limit when epsilon is equal to 0, so this is the problem I was solving 10-15 minutes ago, epsilon, this is a small parameter, and this quantity involving the distance between points inside the drop and the surface, up to an error ρ1 which is small. Now formally you can see that when epsilon goes to 0, this converges to a Dirac delta. So this means that this Debye layer, this thin layer where most of the charge is living close to the boundary, has a radius that goes to 0, has a thickness that goes to 0. Okay, and you are approaching Dirac delta, and you go to the limit when you have perfect conductor and all the charge is at the boundary of the drop. Now you try to do some refined asymptotics. What you find is that the next order is given by this quantity involving the curvature. Okay, so you have some geometry information that goes from the shape of the boundary to the distribution of charges at the boundary, close to the boundary. And the surface charge density of this sigma that appears here in this formula is the one of the perfect conductor plus a perturbation which has a complicated expression involving the Diels-Leydt-Neumann operator. Okay? The good thing about this is that if your rho has a very explicit expression in terms of epsilon, you can plug it into the hydrodynamic problem and make things much simpler. So you don't need to solve the distribution of charges everywhere, you have only to use this formula. Okay, inside Navier-Stokes or Stokes. Okay, so you can compute a leading order which is going to be the normal stress, which is the main thing, and you can find that it's the same that you would have for the perfect conductor case, plus an order epsilon perturbation involving the curvature, involving the geometry of the drop. So you use the boundary condition in a Stokes system, and this is the final result. So what you get is that instead of developing cones, you have something which is smooth, and you have jet which is emerging. You can see here the jet, okay, here and here, okay, and you can compare with a close-up of an experiment. Okay, so the chemistry, so the fact that you have not an infinite conducting medium, but you have a finite conductivity inside the medium due to distribution of ions, produces a regularization, so scaling the singularity, and the way to cure the singularity is by producing a jet. Okay, you can do more than that. You can also compute within numerically, but you can find also analytical argument. You can compute, for example, what is the position of the teeth of the jet versus time, and you find that for any epsilon that we look at, it follows a linear law. And if you look what is the slope of this linear law, so if you look at what is the speed of the jet as a function of epsilon, what you find is that follows essentially a 1 over epsilon law. So this means that the velocity of the jet is very high and is blowing up when epsilon goes to 0 like 1 over epsilon. Okay, so actually this coincides with observation in experiments that the thinner the jet, the faster it's going to go. Okay, and also the higher the conductivity, the faster you are going to have the jet, and also the thinner it's going to be. Okay, so I just finished with my conclusions. So there is evidence of finite time singularities in electrically charged drops. These singularities have the shape of cones, they are self-similar. You can compute, we could compute what is the angle of these cones, and agrees very well with experimental ones. The balance, this I didn't say, but the balance is not as you would expect between surface tension and electric repulsion. The balance near the cone is between electrostatic repulsion and viscous drag, viscous forces. Okay, surface tension is subdominant. Second conclusion, that you can compute numerically the shape of static electrowetting drops. Sometimes they look counterintuitive, for example these toroidal ones, but actually they appear in experiments sometimes. When finite conductivity is considered, they appear jets from the conical tips, and we have computed what are the main properties. We have computed what is the velocity of the jets, what is the diameter, I didn't write it, but we can compute also what is the diameter of the jets. And a central element of the analysis has been the use of numerical methods, like boundary element method, for the numerical simulation. Okay, yeah, and this is it.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Well, it's a question for both of you, actually. Have you looked at electrical painting used in the motor car industry, where you put your car in an electrolyte and then the paint should attach to the car?
I didn't look at this.
It doesn't always attach. It's an interesting question. You have to have enough electric field to make the charged paint droplet go through the electrolyte and actually attach to the car. Do you think you could answer that sort of question with your sort of model?
Well, I mean, we have the codes, so provided it's low Reynolds number, that is the main thing.
Oh, it's all there around.
Yeah, there's something. Also, we have a.
Modelling we did enough a long time ago didn't look at individual droplets, so it was quite different.
No, we had a macroscopic model for droplet distribution, but you had a cut-off, didn't you? You said it wouldn't paint.
It has a cut-off.
And
Yes.
if the field isn't
Like
strong
distribution
enough,
rate.
the droplets don't stick to the car.
So you have instabilities.
Yeah, there's the cut-off, which, well, when they get close to the body,
Mhm.
then it's more difficult for them to move, and so can the electrical forces overcome the viscous forces there?
Well, yeah, really nice to look at it. Yes. I mean, we have the numerical element. I mean, we have methods. We have. We can deal with solids.
You have all the tools you need.
Well, between the two of you.
Is there any chance of getting the cone angle explicitly by local analysis?
No, we did numerically.
No, that wasn't the question.
Yeah.
Have you tried to within a local analysis, is the angle arbitrary, or might it be?
No. Okay. If you look of how many unknowns you have, okay, in order to solve the problem, and you look the number of equations that you have, okay, it turns out that the angle has to be discrete. I mean, not continuous, but discrete. Okay. So, and we always in all simulations found the same angle, also independent of viscosities. Curiously. Yeah, it's numeric. I mean, we don't have analytical. Well, we have an estimate. No? What is the range of the angles?
So your suspicion is the answer would be yes. Is that
Yeah, it should be unique. Yes.
you have a question?
I have the same question actually later.
You know, for the self-similar solutions, we cannot compute because the system is complicated. I mean, we tried, but we couldn't. But what you can do is to show, you know, from the simulation, that if you rescale the results, okay, they tend to converge, no? They tend to collapse to universal curves. That we know.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks again, Mark. Yeah?
Thank you.